The Spirit of St. Louis by Charles A. Lindberg. Preface. In general, this book is about flying and an aviator's life in the beginning third of the 20th century. In particular, it describes the planning and execution of the first nonstop airplane flight between the continents of America and Europe. It has been 14 years in the writing. Started in the city of Paris during the tense pre-war winter of 1938, its manuscript was completed on the shore of Scott's Cove off Long Island Sound in the hardly more tranquil year of 1952. The chapters that follow have been drafted and revised under conditions ranging from the uncertainty of a fighting squadron's tent in the jungles of New Guinea to the stable family life of a Connecticut suburban home, and under such diverse daily influences as accompany noonday, midnight, and dawn. On top of a manuscript sheet, I often mark down my location at the moment of writing or revising. Glancing through old drafts, I now pick out more or less at random the following geographical positions. Aboard SS Aquatina, en route Cherbourg to New York, Army and Naval Club, Washington, D.C., with the Marines on a Marshall Atoll, in a bomber returning from the North Magnetic Pole, General Partridge's residence at Nagoya, Japan, in a house trailer on the Florida Keys, on an airbase in Arabia, parked on a roadside in the Italian Alps, camped in Germany's Taunus Mountains at the Carol's Island of St. Gidius. Because the writing began more than 11 years after the last incident described took place, and because detailed records were not available at the time and later could not be transported everywhere the manuscript traveled, I have drawn heavily on memory of early drafts. Records, on the other hand, illuminate the corners with which they are concerned and surround your mind with their contemporary problems. They are relatively specialized, sometimes contradictory, and often incomplete. They restrict your perspective by bringing you too close to the area they cover, but they offer pay and precision for what they lack in breadth. I have rearranged and rewritten later manuscript drafts under the light of documents culled from attics, files, and libraries. Throughout the following chapters, I have digested conversations and press articles in order to avoid tedious detail. In telegrams, I have used the originals where they are available and approximated from memory where they were not. Since it is impossible to describe exactly the wanderings of the mind, I have placed flashbacks out of sequence to attain impressionistic truth. All incidents in this book are factual, and I have tried to put them into words with accuracy. The engine log and navigation log of the Spirit of St. Louis were stolen by some member of the crowd that overran fences and guards at Le Bourgneuf. Therefore, the log entries from which the chapter heads in Part 2 have been filled in from the performance curves and other records. The figures used are close to those marked down in flight, but there is certainly some variation. When the Spirit of St. Louis flew to Paris, aviation was shouldering its way from the stage of innovation onto the stage of usefulness. Enthusiasts still talked about the conquest of the air. Rules for safety were sometimes just the reverse of today's. When a pilot encountered fog, he turned his eyes to the earth instead of to his dials, and the quality of his senses was as important as that of his mind. The ability of an aircraft to make an emergency landing in a small pasture warranted a considerable reduction in its cruising speed, while the advantage of a cockpit forward, and from the standpoint of vision, was more than offset by the advantage of a cockpit aft, from the standpoint of a crash. But the monoplane had become a serious threat to the biplane's superiority. Instrument flying techniques were being developed by the more progressive pilots, and promises of radio communication gave airmen cause for hope. Along with most of my fellow flyers, I believed that aviation had a brilliant future, but my vision, extravagant as it seemed at the time, fell short of accomplishments now achieved with aircraft by their pilots, engineers, and executives. speeds, ranges, altitudes, powers, sizes, economies, and destructive capabilities today have shattered limiting factors of a quarter of a century ago. Science has transformed the frail craft of Labrie, Lithinol, and the Wright brothers into metal and loaded them with cargoes varying from orchids to atomic bombs. Thousands of men, women, and children now cruise each day above the racing pilot speed of 1927. Agencies all over the world sell tickets to cross the ocean at steamer travel prices. Airlines have flown billions of passenger miles between fatalities. Engines have changed their horsepower ratings from hundreds into thousands. Military crews fly regularly above what the world's altitude used to be. Technically, we in aviation have met with miraculous success. We have accomplished our objectives, passed beyond them. We actually live today in our dreams of yesterday, and living in those dreams, we dream again. Our visions of the future now embrace rocket missiles and supersonic flights. We speculate on traveling through space, as we once discussed flying across oceans. But unlike the early years of aviation, our dreams of tomorrow are disturbed by the realities of today. In this new, almost superhuman world, we find alarming imperfections. We have seen the aircraft to which we devoted our lives destroying the civilization that created them. We realize that the very efficiency of our machines threaten the characters of the men who build and operate them. Together with the people outside the field of aviation, we find ourselves moving in a vicious circle, where the machine, which depended upon modern man for its invention, has made modern man dependent on constant improvement for his security, even for his life. We begin to wonder how rocket speeds and atomic powers will affect the naked body, mind, and spirit, which in the last analysis measure the true value of all human effort. We have come face to face with the essential problem of how to use man's creations for the benefit of man himself. But this leads beyond the scope of my story, which ends on May 21st, 1927, when we were all still looking forward to the conquest of the air.